Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Tease podcast. Today, we are actually highlighting one of our listeners so that she can come on our show and share her story about how she's growing her personal brand using some real life examples. So I'm really excited to dig in today and introduce you to Faye Whitaker, who's going to share a little bit about herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michelle and Joanna, for having me on the Tease podcast. My name is Faye Whitaker. I'm the Chief Brand Officer and founder at W Signature. We are a brand strategy consultancy for creatives, executives, and entrepreneurs. And we help them identify their positioning within their market and help them craft their personal brands so they're identifiable and memorable in their market.
Awesome. That's really exciting. And we met on TikTok
Yes.
and you found us through our content there. And we started chatting and thought it would be really fun to have you on the show to come and share a little bit of your story. I'd love to know, just as we're getting started, as you've been on this journey for a year, what are some of the things that you're doing that are helping most to grow your brand?
Okay, so I decided since I'm bringing myself forward as a founder, I should start with a passion of mine, which is founding a brand called Antiquarian Diaries. And it's grown from my passion project to a heritage media brand. So I showcase sustainability through antiques and vintage. So that's my niche market. That's where I try different ways to create content, see what works, what doesn't, and see how to grow the business as a show and proof of what I can provide for clients.
That's awesome. And what have you been doing so far as you're creating
Sure.
that brand to get it going?
Okay, so I identified 4 major pillars, but the 2 main ones that I do are antiquarian excursions, where I go to arts and cultural events around the city. So I take people to museums, art galleries, and let them know about the cool, sustainable products and services that are available around the city. And also, I have one called Sustainable Shops, where I visit local business owners and we interview them about their crafts or services. If they sell vintage or collect vintage, I interview them as well. So it's been really fun to showcase their work on the platform. And it's been slowly growing.
Faye, I'm loving learning about this business, and the reason that you got into it is the passion for the antiques and sustaining, furniture coming from a vintage side of things instead of going out and buying something new. Or if
Yes.
you're trying to do interior design, if you're trying to spruce up your space, it's not just about going to IKEA and picking up
Yes.
whatever. It doesn't have heart,
Yeah.
value to it. I love this as an example. Joanna and I talk a lot about this on this podcast. So there's so much rhetoric in the online space about personal branding, marketing, content creation. And so many people think that you have to fit into an already designated either niche or audience, or you've got to do this, you've got to talk about this, or only this type of content is going to be successful online. But really, ultimately, whatever it is that you love and how you show up and what you're talking about is such an important integral part of building that personal brand.
Absolutely.
And it can look like
It
anything,
can, whatever you love, whatever you love. Your people will find you, as I say, which is really nice. And there's a lot of them. I was very shocked to find them, but they're there, which is cool.
Another really great thing that you've baked into this strategy is like a sort of a natural shareability, right? Because when you're visiting stores, when you're visiting local business owners, when you're talking to other people, they're going to be excited to be featured, right? So what does that mean? They share it with their friends, they share it to their stories, they share it on their social media. So there's this automatic reach boost from what you're doing.
Exactly. And there's a tight-knit community of vendors. So they all reach out and say, hey, have you met Faye? You should speak to her about what you're selling. You sell 19th century Asian antiques, whereas I sell vintage jackets from the 70s. So you guys should speak to each other. And it just keeps growing the network that way. It's really nice and very easy. It's natural.
Yeah, there's this natural growth there.
I feel like a lot of people, when they're starting out in their content creation journey or they're building a personal brand, there are these insecurities and doubts and kind of fears of, the type of content that you're creating, putting yourself out there, talking to these vendors. Like, How do you feel like you approached that sentiment?
Insecurities, I've experienced it, especially being a niche and looking at the numbers. When you start looking at numbers, it can trip you up. So please stick to your niche. Know that this is something that you would do anyway. So I will always have my phone out anyway on a Saturday at a flea market. So it was just taking that content, adding a voiceover to it, and then translating it into a strategic placement online. It's something you would do for free, something that you love, and something that you can pivot to, help you make some money and take care of yourself, which is really nice over time.
Yeah. Speaking of making money, I think in our conversations about this
Mhm.
episode, you started talking about how you're starting to monetize this channel. And I think
Yes.
that's something that a lot of creators struggle with, right? They might be able to make the content, get out
Mhm.
there, but then how do you start turning that content or that channel into
Mhm.
monetization? And that's something you're starting to
Yeah.
do. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Yes. So initially, because I'm a strategist, I knew this, that I wanted to have certain things. Like I want to have some partnerships, I want to have some sponsorships from brands and things like that. But then what kinds of brands? So ideally, maybe a museum might reach out to me and say, hey, we're having a panel, can you come host? Or um, a vendor might say, hey, I'm at a flea market this weekend, can you plug my booth? Like those kinds of smaller partnerships. But for me, recently I did an antiquarian excursion, and Airbnb actually reached out to me and licensed one of my images for their global 2026 marketing campaign, which was out of the blue. So there's a lot more things that are coming my way that weren't even in my brief uh, strategy that I wanted to do, which is really exciting. And that was a 4-figure paid deal, which is nice. Another opportunity that came through is I noticed, because I'm a media brand, people are there for amplification of their own businesses. So they're not really commenting too much. They might give you a like, but it's more like, hey, post my business, share my business. So I'm more of the connector between other people. So I'm not really expecting too much commentary. But I did get reached out to by a historical home owner who's putting their home up for sale, and they would like me to create a video for them for their historical home website. And that's a 5-figure deal that I proposed to them, and that's in discussion. So things like that from a silent viewer that never commented, never even liked the video that they referenced, which is insane. But, just keep doing your post. It might not show up in the numbers, but you get the real tangible results in the back end, which is nice.
Yeah, what a great way to think about it is that, for one, you're creating content and you don't always know who's watching that
Mhm.
content. Joanna and I talk about this all the time. She lands clients who don't engage with her content
Yeah,
online, but have seen it, have validated her, she's built trust and
yeah,
authority through that space. So for you, having that focus, having that niche, and consistently showing up demonstrates things to the people who are looking for it. And when you have that, again, very clear
mhm,
focus, people are going to reach out to you for a very clear reason.
exactly. Yeah.
Airbnb, homeowner, like what great
I'm so
opportunities to come your
excited.
way, even if you didn't necessarily plan on that to
Exactly.
be the
Exactly.
case.
Very thrilled.
Yeah, and it's amazing what opportunities you can get just by putting yourself out there. I think
Yes.
so often as creators, and even as we're all strategists in this room, right? Like we can get really caught up in wanting to have the perfect strategy, the perfect hook, the perfect video, whatever that is, but there
And what's
is
working
something to
online?
just
Yeah.
picking
Yeah.
something, doing it, putting it yourself out there, and then the right people are going to find you, right? You just never know
Exactly.
what's going to happen if you actually share things with the world and share things you're passionate about.
Yeah. Well, I love that monetization and how things are coming
Yeah.
forward. Are we going to look at a few different pieces of content and talk
Sure.
about how they've been
Yes.
effective?
I would love to.
Okay, great. Which one should we watch
I have
first?
one. Oh, this is a sustainable shops vendor spotlight. And this is Peach. I met her at Chelsea Market downtown in Manhattan on a Sunday. We were actually shooting the trailer for something I'll tell you about later, which is my major goal is to have a web series where I feature these vendors and creatives in long form content. So I would like to have a YouTube channel, web series, and hopefully it get picked up for like Discovery or the History Channel in the future. But right now, starting with short form. And I met her at the market where we were shooting the trailer for that, for promotional purposes. I did our first vendor spotlight while we were there. So it was really nice to meet her. And she sells vintage, a rare vintage jewelry.
I love it. All right, let's give it a watch.
If you're in Manhattan this weekend, stop by and visit the wonderful vendors at Chelsea Flea Market. I met with Peach, who sells rare vintage. Let's hear from Peach.
I have my collection of vintage jewelry. It's a lot of earrings from the 80s and the 90s here. Mostly things that I'm attracted to myself is what I use to pick.
Love it. Okay, so we've got a bit of a B-roll with the voiceover kind of introducing what's going to happen and what you're going to talk about in the video. You've got the vendor featured here, and then you pop to audio of actually being present and the vendor speaking. Peach. And this is at the Chelsea Flea Market. So you're setting the location. You're talking about what you're talking about. You're showing some beautiful close-up shots of the actual vintage jewelry. And talking about it. And this has great engagement. You know what? One thing that Joanna mentioned is you are in partnership with these vendors. So you have already, from a media perspective, you have already started by collaborating and leveraging other people's audiences. So you're not just in isolation trying to do your own thing, which is not bad, but by already going in it with this collaborative mindset, pulling from their audience, pulling from their trust and authority. You know, this is someone who's probably been in this space for a long time, who knows a lot about vintage jewelry. So this is, you know, it's using a lot of really, really great tools. I really love that it's also very clean. You don't have a ton of text on screen. It's not overwhelming. You've got this kind of sweet, jazzy background. It's simple. It's to the point. And it leaves you wanting a little bit more. Like, now I want to know more about Peach as the vendor. I want to know more about the jewelry because it's looking beautiful. And anything I feel like vintage, you're right, comes with like a story.
It's a history. That's what we're documenting.
So yeah, love it.
We're documenting. Yeah, because the audience, which is fun, they don't know that I'm setting them up for a future web series, right? So I'm giving them these short clips with these vendors to then later on bring them on for the long form 10-minute interview where I go to where she keeps the vintage, go with her shopping one day to collect the vintage. Like, I want the whole background to how she ended up in Chelsea that day. So that's what the premise of my show is going to be, which is really exciting. So I'm giving them small tidbits online and hoping to gain engagement and a following to then show that to producers in the future and help them to grow even more, which is exciting.
Yeah, and you're always like in your content finding ways to funnel attention. Something that I've been seeing is so important these days is to really start to think about your content as a funnel instead of just, here's some content, sign up for my thing. Here's some content, sign up for my thing. You're creating content of breadcrumbs, right? What's the piece that's going to get pushed far and wide and find new people? What's that piece of content that's going to take someone farther in and farther in and farther in from you? They don't even have to give you their email address to be in a funnel because you can put them through content strategically in a funnel, right? Your little snippet, they'll get to know all of these people. So then when you produce that long form piece of content and say, go check out Peach's whole story, people are like, wait, I remember Peach.
Her.
I want her whole story.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. And this thing you said about documentation is that we're really in the era of documenting. Like, content creation is not about how much you're producing and going over the top, but those, like, from a business owner perspective, from a coach perspective, from a content creator perspective, we're really in the behind the scenes, the documentation, the just capturing it as we go and as we experience and telling that story, which I love. Okay, next one on our list, if you could give a little bit of background on what we're going to look at next.
This was a sustainable vendor market where they have fashion designers, jewelry vendors, people who have handmade goods from, there's a vendor there from Brazil who works with refugee women and give them sustainable fabrics to create bags. So there's so many different stories. And I interviewed a few vendors from there and helped them amplify their businesses, small businesses, which is really nice.
I love it. All right, let's give it a watch.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Anastasia from Stashi. She also has an upcycling brand. So can you tell us more about your brand?
I'm so happy to be here today. I'm so focused on vintage tapestries, vintage textiles that I use for my business.
Amazing.
So look at that.
Gorgeous.
Each of the corsets that I create from various vintage textiles that I source all over Europe, and then I upcycle them and create my corsets.
And when did you start this brand?
So my brand, I started 9 years ago. So
Amazing.
it's been a journey for me.
I love that. I'm here with Kai, and can you tell us about your brand?
So this is Vault Atelier. We work with upcycle leather. We've been making bags for 7, 8+ years. So this is all upcycle leather. This all the bags are hand stitched by a community of migrant women coming from Venezuela, Haiti. They all based in Brazil. They all work from home, and yeah, they all sign the bag, so you can connect a little bit with the maker. It's pretty fun.
And what made you get into sustainable upcycling?
I think it came from like seeing a lot of waste in the fashion industry, and trying to like
Do our part, right?
do our part.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna pause and chime in. So this is a little bit of a longer video because it's interviews with multiple people throughout the shop. So the first one that we had was the woman who did the vintage corset style. Again, super simple. I love the clean, simple look. There's not a lot of cuts in it. It's got a simple text on screen for the captions. So we're just focusing on like what's being said by the vendor. One thing I already noticed about these videos that I think is really positive is you are using mics.
Yes.
And so the audio, although, you know, we're not in a production setting, is much cleaner than if we were just using a phone. So you're already starting like a bunch ahead, which I think a lot of people mess up, is like clean audio is very important. And sometimes you can't help that it's not great because of whatever happened. But yeah, this is great. Now you've featured multiple people, so you're able to collaborate and they're sharing it again out to their audiences. So you're sharing
That was a more strategic thing on my
in
part.
such a big.
That was more strategic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're tagging them
So once they
in the caption,
once they agreed to be a collaborator,
you're referring to them. Yeah. And so far, we've already got these two brands. They've been around for 8 to 9 years. So these are not just like, you know, people who are just coming to the market. That already shows to me and demonstrates to me that there's some long-staying reason that they've been in business. And so I'm going to pay more attention to you because of who you're aligning yourself with.
Exactly. And they deserve, because they're not.
Joanna, any comment?
Oh, you're good. No, and I love too just the idea that you're getting out and talking to people in real life. I think so often in the digital and content creation space, we think, how can we do it virtually? Obviously, like this podcast needs to be done virtually because Michelle is in California and you're in Manhattan, and there's like a need for virtual meetups and things like that. But you know, if you're struggling to make content, sometimes just getting out, going, talking to people, that helps with that documentation process. If you're just staying home alone in your house every day, not with people, what are you going to document, right?
Exactly. And sometimes if you're like me, for example, I have a larger vision, right? I want to have a show on TV. But then I might say, oh, well, that's not for me. I'm not going to get out and interview people. But if I don't show the work and show myself trying to make my vision come to life, then how would investors want to come and work with me if they don't know what I'm doing? So I'm not going to have a full finished product right off the bat. People have to see what I'm doing and grow with me. And I noticed that people don't usually say, oh, I just found your video yesterday. You have 1 million views. They say, I remember when you just started and you only had 2 followers and I was one of the first. Like, you want those people that invested in you early. And I think that's really a great strategy to have when you're trying to do something bigger and you have something bigger in the back of your head. Just start small, do what you can.
Yeah, you want to think about, absolutely. You want to think about bringing people along with you. What does that journey look like? So on that note, we'll finish this video and take a look at also your presence in the video. So a lot of times, obviously, the interviewee, we're paying attention to like what they're saying, but you're representing yourself in a certain way. So let's take a look real quick about how you're representing yourself in these videos.
I'm here with Monique from Wilson. Can you tell us about your brand?
So we do fine jewelry, vintage. So we do a lot of in sterling silver and also gold, and we basically curate pieces that are current. Like it feels current with the trends. It's vintage, but it doesn't feel like you're wearing something that is like outdated. You know, it's modern but not dated. Yeah.
And when did you start your brand?
So before I was actually selling vintage clothing.
So you're one presenting yourself in a certain way is like we do have to think about, and we talk about this a little bit from a brand perspective, is that how you're portraying yourself, whether that's online, in video, even when you're meeting people or say you do sales, like showing up to that, impressions matter and visual impressions matter. And the way that you're presenting yourself, the way that you're holding yourself is beautiful. Also, the way that you're responding to her, your focus is on the interviewee, your attention is there, you're encouraging. It's a really wonderful way to have a presence and set the stage for the tone of the video that you're also trying to create.
I want to share about that as well because, for example, as I'm preparing for a vintage outing or antique outing, I want to make sure I have on natural fabrics. So that was a linen dress and a linen jacket because that's the world that they live in. I'm learning about their world, but I want them to invite me into it and I want to have respect for it. So I might not wear linen home handmade things all the time, but if I'm in that space, I should acclimate my mind and be mindful and intentional about how I'm showing up in their space because they're inviting me.
Yeah, and when we're presenting our brand, it is the whole picture, right? The clothes, the outfit, the makeup, the way we show up, the way we speak, the words we're saying. It's not just one piece, it's the feeling that we evoke when we're on camera. And it's so important to curate that. And you might not figure that out on day one, right? Like you might go do an interview, watch that interview, and then think, oh, you know what? When I put my hair in that style, you can actually see my face.
Yeah.
So
You can't
next
see
time
my
when I
face.
go
Let me tuck
out,
it next
I'll
time.
pin it back or whatever that is, right? We learn by doing and we learn by
Exactly.
going through that process. And when we have that mindset, we're just going to get better and better and better every time we show up.
Yeah.
I'd love to know from you, I think you said you're about a year into this journey as you're creating this, you're building this world. What advice would you have for someone who's been thinking about starting to post on social media and start to create that personal brand presence? What would you say someone who's like just about to start? What advice would you give them?
Go in your room, take out your note app, and write down all the things you love to do. What do you naturally do? How do you spend your time when you're not at work? And then see what you can talk about endlessly for 3 minutes straight without any additional information and that you love speaking about it. See something that you want to learn about. So I'm not an antiques expert, but I'm positioning myself to connect myself to people who know so I can learn. And as I learn, my audience will learn. So you don't have to know everything up front. You can be a teacher, you can be someone who wants to learn, or you can be someone who wants to discover and explore your neighborhood. Maybe you lived in New York for a long time. If you've never been to the Statue of Liberty, that's something you can take others along. There's just so many ideas, but get some time by yourself in a quiet space and brainstorm and think about what you really love. That's how you can start.
Beautiful. When you start translating that and it becomes your persona. One thing I was thinking about while we were chatting about how we're presenting ourselves is your value system and the values that you bring to your brand and how do those show up? You know, I have a non-alcoholic beverage brand. And although our product is designed for the sober curious, so that would be someone who still drinks, lots of our customers still consume alcohol, but maybe they want something different. But if I was someone who was going out every weekend and taking shots constantly and waking up hungover and drinking, you know, daily or going to happy hour, that would be in direct opposite from a value set perspective to my actual brand. And so, you know, authentically and to be relatable and for people to actually trust and believe in the brand, the product that you're bringing to the market is, like you said, showing up in clothes that represent that, actually loving and wearing and purchasing vintage for yourself, demonstrating how you've done it in your home. You know, aligning all those things so that your brand, your business is a representation of what you believe in and therefore what you want people to believe in order to either purchase, take the next step, or engage with you in some way, right? So I think it's so important to maintain that authenticity, that sense of continuity in how you present yourself, what you're talking about, and all of those
Absolutely.
things. So important. Joanna, do we want to start to kind of wrap up the combo, or should we watch one more?
I think that we've sent a lot of great content and it is about time to wrap up. I'd love to know, Faye, from you, how can our listeners find you and connect with you and follow your journey?
Sure. So I'm everywhere at Antiquarian Diary for the media brand, but for my personal brand as a founder, I'm the Faye Whitaker. So I think I've shared that with you guys as well. And you can find me everywhere. And I also have an offer, a one-to-one consultation. Excuse me. Starting over. I also have an offer for your listeners, a one-to-one consultation to help them build their personal brands and answer any questions that they may have as they're starting out, which is really nice.
Awesome. We will put all of those links in the show notes so that if anyone wants to connect further with Faye, they can find her on social channels or through her one-on-one consultation. Thank you so much for listening to this
Thank you so much for
episode.
having
I
me.
hope that you're welcome. I hope that everyone who listened learned something and got something from Faye's journey. If you did, please subscribe, share this with a friend, and we will see you next time.